have the Human Rights Council, 47 member states, a political organ. I have a picture there. You'll see that room 20 this afternoon. So they have 3 sessions a year, 10 weeks in total, plus special sessions when there's an emergency. It's really, we can attend those sessions as NGOs. We consider it as an NGO, and within minutes you can access to ambassadors of most of the countries of the world. It's part of the game that you can approach them, you can share concerns with them, you can ask for meetings.
No security.
No security, it's part of, so they're really accessible. There's not many places where you can access in such an easy way representatives from all over the world, and it's really part of their work to talk with NGOs like us. I say NGOs in this context, and also to transmit that to their capitals, which they do systematically when we have meetings. They have limited leeway. They're here to serve the interest of their states, of course. There are special procedures. Those are the experts that the Human Rights Council is mandating, either for a specific country or on a specific issue. So when it's mandated on a country, sometimes the country agrees on the mandate and then it works well. Sometimes the country doesn't want to have an expert on them, and in this case the special rapporteur or the expert is not allowed to get into the country, and in this case it gets difficult. And there's a number of states that continuously argue that it's not none of the business of the international community to interfere into what's happening in a country, and countries like China and others are trying to say we don't want this Western kind of dealing with our affairs and with human rights and so on, and so they're systematically opposing thematic rapporteurs, country rapporteurs. There's one on DRC, rapporteur on DRC. There's several on African countries. Another mechanism is commissions of inquiry. You might have heard of the one in Syria. This one is one of the most famous currently. There has been one in North Korea that has been famous, and a couple of others. Burundi currently also. And they really try to collect the facts of what's happening to facilitate later that justice is done, so that what has happened is not forgotten. So the UN doesn't have an army, but they are able to have, at least to have some eyes and ears and to collect what's happened and to contribute to justice that way. And there's thematic rapporteurs, like on human trafficking, on poverty, etc., on religious freedom. And so we're monitoring their activities, we're monitoring also the countries they are going to visit, and every time we know that there might be an interest from our constituencies to meet with such a rapporteur, we're trying to facilitate that. So typically if this special rapporteur on freedom of religion is visiting a country, systematically they know us, so they will connect with us, and they will ask us about our constituencies in that country that they can meet during their visit. And so that's helpful, because then in the reports then they are presenting, they also mention the situation of the evangelicals, for example, and or the other concerns we might have, and this feeds into the system once it's in their official reports.
Michael, just briefly, but at the World Humanitarian Summit there was a considerable effort leading up to it to engage faith organizations and really participate in the development of the SDGs and the commitments that came out of it and so on. And none of that made its way into the final report that came out of the Humanitarian Summit. So it leads me to ask, to what extent do you think that United Nations is really receptive to input from WA and willing to act on that?
Well, it's a good question, and I think it depends. There's several levels. Here, when we talk of the experts are rather open to collaborate with us. We considered as a religious minorities in many cases, and for them it's normal to hear what a minority is experiencing. So they take it into account, they put it into reports. Now, when we move at a more political level, and then it gets more difficult, because then it depends a lot of their political will, of their political agenda, and if raising that issue connects with their agenda or not. And this is where we see that, for example, raising human trafficking is much easier than raising religious freedom. in the context of the Human Rights Council, for example. Much more difficult to advocate for religious freedom. It's one of the issues that is the least addressed because it's a tricky issue and it's an issue that the states are not so eager to address publicly. They do so, but not as easily as other issues.